While Pakistan-U.S. relations forge ahead, is India being thrown under the proverbial bus? In a reversal of President Trump's first term, Pakistan has become the South Asian ally of choice. But what does Islamabad gain? And how should India and China respond? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmaker is Pakistan. Well, foreign relations under the current U.S. administration are unpredictable at best. Given Pakistan's trade volumes with the United States are 1/20th of India's, many assumed a strong Washington-Delhi relationship would take priority. But instead, it's Islamabad that's curried U.S. favor. And some are questioning if that compromises Pakistan's relationship with Beijing and further agitates already tense Delhi-Islamabad ties. So what rewards will Pakistan really reap for leaning into its Washington friendship? Here's a look now at how the relationship has changed since the Trump administration took office.
A dramatic shift in US-Pakistan relations. 7 years ago, President Donald Trump accused Islamabad of giving Washington nothing but lies and deceit, calling it a safe haven for terrorists. Later, Joe Biden labeled Pakistan one of the most dangerous nations in the world. But now, in Trump's second term, the two countries are closer than ever. In May, tensions in the region flared when nuclear-armed neighbours Pakistan and India fought a 4-day war following a deadly terror attack in Kashmir. As the tit-for-tat attacks escalated, President Trump, according to Pakistan, stepped in to help broker a ceasefire.
I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade.
Just a month later, Pakistan's Army Chief Azim Munir visited Washington. In an unprecedented move, Trump hosted the powerful military leader for lunch at the White House, discussing trade, economic growth, and regional tensions.
I want to thank him for not going into the war, just, ending the war.
Last week, Munir returned to the US to meet with senior military officials, including the incoming US Middle East commander, Brad Cooper. Washington and Islamabad also struck a deal at the end of July, which includes development of Pakistan's massive oil reserves. And in another gain on the economic front, Zach Witkoff, the son of Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, was in Pakistan in April, signing agreements with the country's crypto council to promote and develop the industry. Witkoff is co-founder of World Liberty Financial, a company 60% owned by the Trump family. The delegation also met with the Army Chief and the Prime Minister.
You guys are sitting on trillions of dollars of rare earth minerals right now. Currently, it's an e-liquid asset. By tokenizing them, you can actually make it a liquid market, and you can bring enormous wealth to the youth of this country.
While Pakistan courts the US, its main rival, India, has been sidelined. New Delhi hasn't escaped Trump's 25% tariffs, and now Washington is threatening to raise that to 50% as punishment for India's purchase of Russian oil.
The Trump administration has taken the transactional approach to an extreme with India. Not looking at trying to build a relationship, which we've been working on for 30 years.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's largest trade partner is China, Washington's main rival. Over the past 5 years, Beijing has supplied over 80% of Islamabad's arms imports. It has also invested tens of billions of dollars and helped Pakistan secure IMF loans. And the Chinese side is confident this partnership will continue.
China and Pakistan are ironclad friends and all-weather strategic partners. I believe China-Pakistan relations will not be affected by third parties.
President Trump's unpredictable foreign policy has pushed China and India to rebuild their strained ties. So the trade wars, conflicts, and shifting alliances are shaking up the balance of power in Asia.
So just how reliable is this relationship between the U.S. and Pakistan? And how much does it potentially irritate leaders in India and China? Well, joining me now to debate that and more are from Islamabad, Executive Director of the Center for Research and Security Studies, Imtiaz Gul. From Washington, Professor of International Affairs and Political Science at American University's School of International Service, William Lawrence. And also from Pakistan's capital, former Lieutenant General and former Pakistani Federal Minister for National Security, Naeem Khalid Lodi. Thank you all so much for being with me. Imtiaz, I'll start with you and ask, as a Pakistani, how good you feel about where the U.S. and Pakistan stand now. And please let me quote one of your former ambassadors to the United States. Speaking to the Washington Post, she actually said, "Flattery is not a strategy. It is not long-term." Does she have a point?
I mean, she hit the nail on the head because of the transactional nature that we have seen in the US-Pakistan relationship. We have had the best of envoys in the 90s, in the 2000s, but the relationship always remained on the edge. And right now, why things have turned around for Pakistan, which I'm very pleased about as a Pakistani, is because of the phenomena Donald Trump. He seems to somehow dislike India, or maybe the CIA, the military establishment in the US, has whispered something into the ears of Donald Trump, which basically has turned India something displeasing for the United States. And that's why he has been basically publicly throwing slurs at the Indian leadership. So as a Pakistani, we are happy, but as the ambassador put it, it's flattery and it's very transactional. And I think the world, particularly India and the European countries, would simply wait out Donald Trump's term for another 2 years or so.
General, do you believe strengthening ties the way we've seen so far is best strategically for Pakistan, or do you share some of the fear that we've heard that the U.S., could effectively be using Pakistan as leverage to get back at India or get what it wants from India?
These fears and apprehensions and this transactional nature of relationship, that is all true. I mean, we all have that. But I would like to compare two scenarios. One is not talking, the other is talking. Having a relationship, having a good relationship, and not having a very good relationship. So whether it is intermittent, or it is transactional, or it is fearful or not fearful, as far as we have a relationship and we are talking, I think, in my own assessment, that it is much better than not talking or not having a good relationship, as long as we are aware that it should not be at the cost of any other closer relationship that we might be having with other countries. That is my view.
I.e. China.
True.
Okay.
and maybe, right.
China and India?
I mean, as far as India is concerned, for example, personally, I would be happy that if America has good relations with us and also with India, because then we are in a better position to probably talk to India, resolve our issues, rather than, having America on the Indian side and not talking to us or not having good relations with us. So in my own opinion, having relations with any country, even if it is an enemy country, and America is not an enemy country, it is good, because then you are talking, then you are communicating to each other. So that way, I would say this is a positive thing.
Okay, so William, we're hearing mostly a net positive, but I'm going to look at the analysis of one think tank. You might not be a fan necessarily of the American Enterprise Institute, but it did say that Trump is effectively taking bribes to change positions on India via the World Liberty financial deal with Pakistan's National Crypto Council. Is that what's at play here?
I think it's part of it. The transactional nature, which your other guests got exactly right, includes corrupt transactions. And while the bulk of that corruption, comes from the Middle East, and I think David Kirkpatrick in the New Yorker counts at about $3.5 billion the Trump administration has made through cryptocurrency and other mechanisms since the beginning of the Trump administration 6 months ago. That's all new money. I don't think that Pakistani related money-making schemes is the only or even the largest factor here, despite the corruption and the unethical aspects of it. I think there are many other things going on here. And I also think that neither the Trump administration or Washington in general views the Pakistani, India, America triangle as a zero sum between India and Pakistan, the way we often hear that the Indians view it, and maybe to a lesser degree the Pakistanis view it. Rather, it's two bilateral relationships. One has been a roller coaster for many decades, the U.S.-Pakistani relationship, and it's on an upswing now, like it was on an upswing in 2014 and 2019. And then the U.S.-India relationship is on a downswing. And there are many reasons for that, but the biggest reason is the fact that Trump thinks he can get his Russia-Ukraine deal by pressuring India through tariffs, and Trump is taking credit for the India-Pakistan, for ending the India-Pakistan war, which Pakistan said was true, and India took offense to it, and probably for good reason. But all of that personalization of foreign policy that Trump does has led to a souring of the U.S.-India relationship and has accentuated and strengthened a lot of these trends that we're talking about today.
There's so much to it, but I mean, very quickly, William, where do you see the U.S. actual role in the peace brokering, if we can call it that, between India and Pakistan in their last skirmish or war, however you describe it? Would you give the U.S. as much credit as Pakistan is?
Not necessarily, and flattery is flattery. I think the U.S. played a role, which the Trump administration hugely embellished, and the Pakistani government confirmed. And then the Indians were opposed to how those characterizations were going on, that the Pakistanis weren't exaggerating the way Trump was exaggerating it. And this is true in the Azerbaijan-Armenia thing, the Congo-Rwanda thing. Even there was a Serbia conflict that Trump took credit for ending that he had no role in. So there's been about 6 wars that Trump claims to have ended that he didn't
7.
really end. Yeah, okay. That he hasn't really fully ended and very much aggrandizes his own role. But as the largest power in the world, if the U.S. even does a little bit like we were talking about how talking is better than not talking, sometimes when the U.S. talks, it helps in these peacemaking situations.
Okay. Imtiaz, let me come back to you, because there are other complaints I've been hearing out of Pakistan that the U.S. has really been reinforcing the power of Pakistan's military in general. I'll let you comment on this as well, but Imtiaz, let me get your opinion first. That the United States is empowering the influence of Pakistan's military in its politics, and that is a dynamic that many Pakistanis were desperate to change. Do you see that happening?
I think Donald Trump himself had promised to end that dynamic by saying that not only in the United States but also elsewhere, he would basically go after the security establishments to reestablish the rule of law. And this is what frustrated a lot of Pakistanis who had hoped that perhaps with this things would change. But the very fact that Pakistan's prime minister has not met Donald Trump once, he has been here while the army chief was quoted twice in the White House and one for an exclusive lunch. That essentially signals the empowerment, the American readiness to empower and appropriate more importance to the Pakistan's military. And I would say that this has been part of the American CIA and the military establishment's agenda to keep very close to Pakistan's military establishment, and probably it also manipulated the events in such a way that Donald Trump had no hesitation in inviting Pakistan's army chief for an exclusive lunch, whereas the prime minister was sitting watching helplessly on television that his army chief was meeting with the president of the strongest superpower of the world.
General Lodi, I saw you nod your head there. Is that to say you agree?
No, actually, the first thing which I want to clarify that I am not in favor of army interfering in the politics at all. And this is not I'm saying after retirement. Those who know me, even during my service, I was against that, although I will not be able to prove it. But what I think is that whenever any country deals with another country, they always see that who is actually calling the shots, because they need business, they want things to move ahead. So I think Donald Trump knew it very well that whether right or wrong, that who is calling the shots and with whom he should meet so that the agenda can be moved forward. And that is basically the reason that he is whatever happened, the meeting and all that brother Imtiaz was also referring to. So in my opinion, it is not that he is trying to empower the military to carry on with whatever they are doing. Although meeting with the army chief means that legitimizing their presence, but he is aware that if he meets the political heads, it will not make any headway. So probably that, in my opinion, is the main reason that why he's meeting the man who really matters in Pakistan today.
Okay. There's really so much to look at in more detail here. I wish we had a lot more time, but William Lawrence, let me ask you, I have to move on to another angle here because, of course, relationships from both India and China, India, China, Pakistan, China, are at play here. And there were plenty of Americans who were a bit worried about where this relationship with Pakistan was going because they trust China a lot less. They see that as the one cause for concern in Asia, and that India was actually the best bulwark against China. And to sacrifice a stronger relationship with India, actually gives China more power somehow in this dynamic. Do you see that there? And should the U.S. be worried about how China positions itself in this new relationship between Pakistan and Washington?
I think the India part of what you're talking about, I ascribe to you much more than the Pakistan part of what you were talking about. And I think the Pakistan part of what you were talking about, there's a long history there of Pakistan very nimbly navigating between its strong relationship with China and being a conduit, going back to the Nixon administration, of U.S. dialogue with China. And I don't think, Pakistan being close to China really concerns the United States, given that history and given the way Pakistan so ably navigates the complexity of all those relationships. However, I think the push of the United States of India away and into the China camp, as evidenced by the recent Chinese visits to India and all of the new activity being proposed, does concern the United States, should concern the United States, and because India had been featuring so largely in the thoughts of the last 4 or 5 American presidents as part of this sort of Indo-Pacific theater in which India was helping everywhere, including in the South China Sea, is of concern. I mean, obviously, the U.S. should work out its problems primarily with China directly. The two countries trade more than any countries in the world and need to get smarter about their politics, even though China does sort of push in its own near abroad, to use that phrase we use for Russia more, in ways that are concerning for the United States. Economically, all of these countries should be thriving in their relations with each other, and Pakistan's turn towards more of a focus on international economics and international geopolitics under its new leadership is all a good thing. So again, I think the main dynamic here is less a Pakistan-American one and more of a failing U.S.-India dynamic, which then raises all these great questions.
That's actually the one I'm talking about, because those Americans who trust China less, as I was trying to explain, they believe that India is key to preventing China's domination in Asia. And that the U.S. is working against its own interest by marginalizing India here.
Yeah, they're correct.
Okay, you do feel that way. There's that risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And China, again, there's a lot of different theaters here and questions. There's the Taiwan question where India plays less of a role. There's the South China Sea question where India plays a larger role. But any rapprochement between India and China that just helps India and China, doesn't affect the U.S. is okay. But if they're not fighting on their border, that's a good thing. But any rapprochement between India and China, which weakens the U.S. position, obviously, is bad for the United States. And the way the U.S. does best, like any country, is to have great relations with everybody, with Pakistan that can help with China, with India, as a bulwark against China in certain respects, with China itself. And the type of diplomacy that we're having right now out of the United States is not very thoughtful, not very engaged in a lot of these issues, very short-termist, getting back to your first question today. And all of that is going to create future problems.
If I'm allowed to
Go
say
ahead,
thing.
General.
Yes, I think that is true that America wanted India to be a bulwark against China, but then they saw many things. One, the skirmish between China and India that exposed, a military side of India. Then whatever went in the 4 days war between Pakistan and India. So probably their confidence in India's ability to stand as a bulwark against China, that got diluted. And also then once they realized that India is quite busy in BRICS, and BRICS is also looking for an alternative currency. And India was importing a lot of things from Russia, although arms they were importing for a very long time. So I don't think that could be the reason. Even oil they were importing for the last 2 years. In my opinion, these two things, India's activity in BRICS and India's inability to stand militarily either against China or Pakistan, that probably the confidence has gone thin between America and India. This is one of the reasons, I think.
Okay. Imtiaz, I see you nodding in agreement. I wanted to speak a little bit further, though, when we talk about the kind of special interests now at play in the Pakistan-U.S. relationship. We talked about the cryptocurrency issue, and there's also this issue of mining in Pakistan, and the U.S. seems very eager to get hold of many of Pakistan's mineral reserves, but we're also hearing that they're incredibly difficult to develop, and that the U.S. might not have much of a chance of profiting from what's on sale from Pakistan because they're just very hard to access. And therefore, Pakistan is overestimating the economic depth of the relationship that it can really have with the U.S. at its own expense.
Yeah, first, a very quick note on China. I think India has been forced, Donald Trump has forced India to gravitate towards China, and evident from a statement 2 days ago after a meeting between Foreign Ministers Jaishankar and Wang Yi, in which India has very categorically said Taiwan is part of China and that India is ready to cooperate with China as much as possible. So this is a repositioning of India, and they also have agreed to freeze their border disputes. So this, I think, augurs well for the region as a whole. As far as the oil exploration minerals, I think these were offered, I think, by Pakistan as, I wouldn't say flattery, but as incentive to a president who is more a businessman than a conventional politician. Crypto, also, I think there's a lot of fuss, a lot of criticism about this within Pakistan, a country whose foreign exchange reserves largely comprise borrowed money. So a lot of people are asking question whether the US would be able to invest a couple of $1 billion in helping Pakistan creating a crypto reservoir of assets and to build on it. So whether the US or the US companies are actually at all able to extract minerals, rare earth minerals up in southwestern Pakistan is a big question, because it would take 6 to 7 years till we start extracting that. And so far, we don't have the real minute details of those deals that have been apparently reportedly signed, which span 40 years. And in 40 years, $2 billion worth of extraction every year. And what actually Pakistan gets out of it, we don't know.
Right. Imtiaz, just a minute and a half left, so I'll stick with you very quickly. Another angle here that Pakistan, the government at present, had been quite nervous when Trump came to office that he would actually push for the release of Imran Khan. And in seeing that he hasn't done that, was that considered another win for the Pakistani government internally?
This certainly gave legitimacy or lent legitimacy to the present government, against which there is still a Pakistan Democracy Act pending before the Congress, signed by both Republicans and Democrats. But it seems that geopolitics, the United States versus China, China containment policy has trumped every other consideration as far as the Trump administration is concerned.
Okay. Imtiaz, we're actually going to have to allow that to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd really like to thank all three of you so much for being with us on this incredibly insightful conversation. And I'd like to thank our viewers, as always, for joining us. And remember, you can follow us on social media. And do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.